Jacked Up Review Show. It's a Jacked Up Review Show. Jacked Up Review Show. It's a Jacked Up Review Show.
Join us as we cover many an insane movie and numerous cult TV phenomenons. Are you ready to get jacked up? Are you with us? Then listen on.
Listener discretion is advised. It's a Jacked Up Review Show. It's a Jacked Up Review Show. Jacked Up Review Show. It's a Jacked Up Review Show. It's a Jacked Up Review Show. Jacked Up Review Show.
Welcome, ladies and gents. So, tonight we got Pop Culture's Cosmos. Gerald, Glassford, and I are going to just talk about the various streaming trends and other cliff notes regarding streaming giants like Amazon, Netflix, and more. Thank you to the show.
Thank you for asking me to come on. I've been a big fan. I appreciate everything you do, and just thank you enough. And boy, I tell you what, on our show, we talk a lot about the streaming environment. I mean, it's something that over the past three years, I think, really has grown exponentially. There's a lot of big fish in the sea. There's a lot of smaller fish in the sea, but right now it's just like kind of like the Wild West, I guess. Like early '90s for the satellite companies. With as far as everybody going ahead and out there on the
DVRs
channels.
were just taking off.
Yeah, absolutely. So everybody was like trying to find their own niche as far as cable and satellite companies at that time, just trying to go ahead and get their own channels and get the 100 channels up, and everybody started to get the DirecTV and Dish and all the hundreds of channels there. And
Before they started playing games on, we might not renew that channel on our service,
yeah, exactly. So now it's evolved into what the latter half of the previous decade, in 2018, 2019, the dominance of Netflix, and then everybody else seeing how Netflix is doing it and like, I want to jump in too with my service. So now everybody has their own streaming service. So it's
seen in all kinds of formats. I mean, hell, we're doing a podcast right now, and I'm seeing it seems like just about everybody's got a podcast. Whether you're an outward celebrity or an outspoken political activist, you got a podcast, and it doesn't matter if it went for just 2 months or a whole or 5 years. You got it, and that's so true. Though it seems like with all the cable channels realizing they got to compete with it, and people are giving it up, and it's like I just really wasn't surprised. Like most everything you have on Shudder, you can also get on your AMC, because that's the same company.
Yes,
on your cable dish.
And it's just you cut so many people in the past 5 years have cut the cord on cable, and they've said goodbye to broadcast television, and what they're using now to consume their television is through streaming outlets. So it's very interesting to see the changing habits and how quickly they've changed for everybody to get used to the way Netflix brings out stuff, the way Disney Plus, the way Discovery Plus, Showtime, HBO Max, all these other different entities and streaming outlets. Very interesting to see.
When you sign up for a phone now, often you can find a plan saying, hey, get 2 to 5 months free of HBO Max or Disney Plus, and so it's ongoing. Everyone's always trying to share the money pit,
Absolutely. It's just amazing. It's amazing how this is now a priority, because the fact that Netflix primarily has now done so well in the marketplace and is now the preeminent viewing entity in the world at this point in time.
Absolutely. Do you believe the rumor that Spotify might try and reach out and start doing original programming, since they were first kind of a way to host music? Now they're hosting all other sorts of audio stuff like audio plays and podcasts.
What's interesting in the past week, as we're recording this, you talked about podcasts and how everybody now has podcasts, and there's like over 1 million podcasts literally
Mhm.
that are out there or that are either in some kind of state, whether it's active or not. But you know, Spotify jumped on that after seeing how well Apple did it, and now Spotify is considered by many to be the leading outlet for podcasting, for listening to podcasts, even surpassing Apple, which is kind of weird seeing how many iPhones are out there. But
Right.
I'll tell you, it's just so interesting to see how this is being laid out with Spotify. But I agree. I think that Spotify is going to try to continue to diversify in any way, shape, or form that they can. And I would assume that's probably one way that they're going to go about it, because you see them try to do exclusive content, and you see how well they're doing with that with Joe Rogan and some other outlets that they're trying to go ahead and bring in. The Ringer, they paid
Mhm.
quite a handsome sum for that. So yeah, just very interesting to see. And I would not put anything past Spotify at this point.
Now, based on the trends you are seeing, it seems like they're also kind of changing it up. Like everybody's uh, reminding you, like regardless of whether it's free or not, everyone has like a bunch of different promos showing the different shows, and now they're just realizing, because like, okay, so everyone tunes out after a while, so we should just make it be to where just we show a promo showing all the shows, but it lasts only 5 seconds.
Yeah.
We get their attention, and we don't give them any excuse to not see it, not be aware of it.
Well, it's just so amazing. I mean, because when it comes to these promos, and everybody's now focused in on if it's not coming out. Actually, it right now in what we're dealing with now, people are preferring staying at home and watching these premiere shows and movies on a streaming platform as opposed to going to the movies. I mean,
They
the
pick
only
their
thing
own
we're
formula, whether they want to binge it all or just wait it out.
exactly. I mean, Netflix, they throw everything out there on a lot of their on a great majority of their series. They throw all the episodes out there, and to say, hey, go watch it, and there it is all for you. Some others are still doing the traditional week by week thing like Disney Plus or whatnot, but I think that it's very, very interesting to see how the consumer is actually adapting to all this and either preferring one way or the other. But it's just amazing that they're avoiding, even with the pandemic, I mean, outside of the event movies, they're avoiding going to the theater in droves now. And they're just saying, hey, I'm just going to wait until it goes on to VOD or streaming outlet for all these movies, and I'm going to see a lot of things that are really high quality on streaming these days that you won't see now on broadcast television or even cable.
Oh yeah, not anytime soon.
No.
And they still give you a kind of a back channel. Like if you don't have HBO Max, some of the Max stuff is still going to be on replay on the regular HBO cable, but
Oh yeah.
vice versa. There's still going to be something where it's like, hey, you missed last week's broadcast. It's okay. It's the next day up there on Max. And it is kind of interesting how Disney, again, part of their whole deal with Fox was we buy your movie library and you guys do whatever the hell you want with your TV library. So Fox, I think Hulu really wised up. I've really been impressed because when it started out in the early to mid 2000s, I was just constantly disappointed. I'd be like, hey, I always wanted to watch that movie, but the ads are incessant, and man, that movie was more trouble. I might as well have just paid for it. It was so bad. And I think they wised up. They just put in more budget. They realized we got to have some better movies. We can't just be doing what Netflix has, where we got the very dirt cheap direct to video, obscure cable TV movies. We got to wise up and, offer all kinds of options. They've increased the amount of companies that they pull their movies from. So there's way more options, and their TV library, I think they realized that so many of their classic shows, like The Practice and St. Elsewhere, will never be released ever, on any kind of medium. Yeah. So it only makes sense, instead of having it take up space in the vault, actually have it be offered as one of their many shows to stream along with the new content. They don't do they give you at least 6 months to catch up on a show before they say, leaving in, 6 days,
Well, that's one of the reasons why Netflix grew to such a large amount, is because they had, even if they weren't able to produce that much in the way of new content at the time, over the years in 2015, 2016, as they started to grow that, their foundation of the back shows like The Office and so many other hit
Breaking
shows,
Bad, yeah.
yeah, they were the backbone of Netflix and how it grew. So people say, okay, I want to catch The Office because I really have learned to appreciate it now, and The Office has grown a new life since its original airing,
Very true.
and a lot of that is very much devoted to Netflix, and the fact that they were promoting it so much, and when it got transferred over to Peacock, and now that's hopefully they're hoping that they're actually going to go ahead and be able to find that kind of success. You mentioned Hulu on my show. I really have come to appreciate as far as the content is concerned and their efforts there, as far as the diversity, as far as the programming is concerned.
Struggle with their original programming, though. I will say that
they do,
because they don't promote it as much. Like Netflix, you'll know about it because there's always a notification or the actor tags or filmmaker tags that they have set up, or just the genre. Like if you like this movie, you might like this new horror movie, which just premiered yesterday. It's just.
Well, with Hulu, though, there's a lot of issues I have with them. I've been a very strong critic of them because the fact is, when in the middle of last decade, when they had the opportunity to become the next Netflix over Netflix, and them also, I'd say Crackle was by Sony. Those were two outlets that were there streaming already. They had shows, they had a lineup
for so long, and yet I don't know how. I'm with you. I don't know how they were even surviving when they first started out. Because like Crackle, I would see ads for, especially if it was a Sony released movie in a theater, but
because it's owned by Sony,
right? But yet they wouldn't really offer any physical media of their shows afterwards at even Redbox, and then. Yeah, it's like I think they also had way too many ads, and sometimes you'd forget certain shows were still going on there. You're like, really? I thought it was just a miniseries,
Yeah, I hear you on that one. It's just the fact that those two are the primary ones that I really have. If when it comes up, I really criticize them because they had the opportunity. They were there with a library that people wanted, that had backing, and they could have, with the right maneuvers, with the right things that they basically the right emphasis, and also Amazon Prime. All three of them were set up during the time that Netflix was still a small entity in the streaming marketplace and had every advantage to go ahead and beat Netflix. And they chose not to because for various reasons. With Amazon, they just didn't care about Prime. They just had it there. It had their old shows on it. They had all this extra stuff on it. They really didn't have anything much original. They really didn't care about it. But even at that time, Amazon, even in the early part of last decade, they were still a powerhouse and still had hundreds of millions of dollars that they could have thrown at it and made it that Netflix. With Hulu, they've been around so long, they had every opportunity, and Disney doesn't own all of it. It owns part of it. I think around 60%, if I'm not mistaken.
Something like that.
Yeah, you could have used the Disney library or other things out of it, like ABC library, which they do. You could have promoted that even more off the ABC channel and vice versa to go ahead and really make that a foundational thing. Yet today, Hulu has only got around 30 to 40 million subscribers, whereas Netflix has 5 times that amount. Mm-hmm. They have that every chance to go ahead and have that opportunity to become the Netflix. And with Crackle, like you said, they have the Sony library. They've always had the Sony library. They could have gone ahead and made effort, and Sony just is a matter with all these three. It was just a matter of putting the time, effort, and funds into making original content that people want to come to and gravitate towards. And they didn't do that in time. Netflix did. Even Netflix had to borrow money. Netflix had to go ahead and, whatever way that they did to get the kind of money, they got it. They did
Part
it.
of it
They produced
seems like they wanted to access every single panel, but it's like that's kind of Amazon's shtick.
Yeah,
they're borrowing programs from that the other giants have, and then mixing in their own 2 cents, and then no telling what anyone else is going to try and do at this point.
But Amazon had the built-in advantage over everyone because
I mean, it's owned IMDb.
Yeah, but you have they bought IMDb, Box Office Mojo, that type of deal. But they had Amazon Prime, which you get because everybody was shopping on Amazon Prime even last decade. Okay, if I'm going to go shopping online, I better have my Amazon Prime subscription. It was there. It's a built-in advantage, and they blew it for so many years. Finally, now they in the past 3-4 years, they finally understood that. But there's and they have 200 million subscribers that are now obviously still using it primarily as a shopping tool, but they're now realizing, hey, there's good content on there. We're going to start gravitating towards there as well. But when it comes to Disney Plus, some of these other late arrivals, Apple Plus, HBO Max, they've got a really tough hill to climb. And Disney, we're starting to see it now. They were the in thing with Marvel and Star Wars, and so much is spoken about all the stuff that that they do on their network and their streaming network. But they're trying to, after they got over to a certain point in the hundreds right now, because they're over 100 and I think 30 million, they're just hitting a wall on subscribers. And with HBO Max, we don't know exactly how many subscribers that they have, but I know that their day and date plan with their movie releases, like have worked out with The Matrix Resurrections, Dune, and all the other movies that came out during the course of 2021. I mean, that has worked, but that won't continue because in 2022, they're discontinuing it. So we don't know the future for HBO Max and how well it's going to do, even though they have Friends and Harry Potter and some really good
pretty much their backup plan, because they just knew that with the pandemic happening is like that was going to put they were going to lose some kind of money, and so that's where there was like, hey, this is what it is. Although it is kind of annoying how other channels did that, and once again they didn't advertise their movies much at all. Like Paramount Plus did that. Yeah, they're still kind of they were taking forever because they had so much content on there, and then to make matters worse, they decided, oh, we goofed up, how would we change our name, and then cause even more confusion.
Well, Paramount Plus they're even riding a tougher uphill battle, even though they've got the CBS library and they've got the Comedy Central library and pretty much everything. Yeah, everything enough. From the Viacom library for as far as it's concerned, whatever Viacom owns. People, it's just a name recognition, like you said. That's like everybody's fifth or sixth choice.
And then there's streaming all these other
the first
channels.
One that everybody cuts out. If you're like short on cash each and every on a month, certain month, I got to cut a streaming service. That one is the first one you cut out.
If you want to just watch some of their shows like FBI or NCIS, you could literally binge it for a month and then cut the cord on that one.
Yeah,
and then
absolutely,
like you say, is like. I'm pretty sure all the movies on there are movies that everyone's seen 100 times over and are more likely to probably just pull out their Blu-ray just for the hell of it, like Indiana Jones or, any of the other Star Treks. And same thing with their shows. Is like they were trying to get some of the same numbers as Mandalorian, but it's just like, okay, I've seen it. It was a great show. Now I'm going to cut the cost on that one and subscribe, 12 months from now.
Well, that's the thing. That's the old argument, Star Trek versus Star Wars and its popularity. Star Trek, you could. It's such a great franchise. I love it. I watch the shows on Paramount Plus. Star Trek Discovery is amazing, but it's if you don't watch Paramount Plus, you don't know about it. And with Star Wars, it's reached a general audience that Star Trek never has. As far
unfortunately,
as
so yeah, it's just like it was still just like it was a movie franchise first, so it kind of had that buy-in. Everyone was like, oh. I imagine what it'd be like if it's a streaming show. Well, it's going to do pretty good as a streaming show.
Yeah, Discovery is an amazing show. Well, just high quality. Production values are tremendous, but you feel like it's almost getting shortchanged because Paramount Plus just is such a small entity in the streaming marketplace.
Those movies, he had that whole falling out with the track fans when they were doing their own fan films, and so it does kind of stink that it had to have some of that studio versus the fans arguments before we got all these options. I mean, we got an animated Trek comedy show, and then we got a serious kids animated Trek show, and then we got the Picard continuation. But yeah, it's like Discovery was their main buy-in, and it's like, but like you say, they didn't advertise it enough.
Lower Decks is really funny. Like you said, with Picard, a lot of people are liking that. I thought it was okay. It got ups and downs there, but the new Star Trek Discovery show, a Star Trek show that's on, what's it on, Nickelodeon and also Paramount Plus.
Yeah.
I highly recommend that for kids. I got the chance to see the first few episodes.
If you just want to see more Adventures of Janeway, go for it.
Yeah, it's actually, but it's very good. It's very entertaining for kids. And I really think actually for adults as well, it's something that keeps people's attention. But again, it comes down to a question: are people going to be able to access it and watch it, or even care? Because Paramount Plus is such a small entity in this whole streaming marketplace.
Totally, I think that's the best. So, given what we know now, you want to just lay out like maybe 2 other predictions, I guess. Like, is Shudder going to keep increasing? Is Amazon finally getting it, even though it took a while, and that they warn people on when titles are leaving, and they're flushing some of the independent films that keep making their way on there because they're realizing they got all kinds of even if you put aside the content, the poster and other stuff is just doesn't look professional at all. And so it's
Well, I think if there's one outlet that is, has a chance to go ahead and compete with Netflix, and I don't know if ultimately beat Netflix, it's not, because like no one's going to beat Netflix tomorrow. For the next 3, 4, 5 years, as long as they're throwing out so much content at people, a lot of it sticks, and that means hundreds of millions of viewers are going to be watching it. The Squid Game, Red Notice, even a show that was failing, that ultimately got canceled, like Cowboy Bebop, that got 75 million viewers to watch that show. So not a lot of people, not a lot of entities have that built-in advantage. And then you see Disney Plus, they hit a wall because Star Wars and Marvel, that's it. They're throwing out their big guns. There's not much left behind it after that. So you don't know how much more you're going to get out of Disney Plus. I think the one entity out there that can compete with Netflix is Amazon Prime. Dollar for dollar. Actually, they have more money than Netflix. They always have something else that they can rely on besides the
IMDb
content.
TV thing is a side hustle.
Yeah, absolutely. But the Lord of the Rings, when it comes out later this year,
I hope it's good, man. I hope.
Yeah, but that's going to be a big draw in for a lot of people. And plus, if they do the Mass Effect and that comes out as far as the series is concerned, and they do that
Mass
well.
Effect. Okay, I did not know
It's
that.
been rumored. At the time we're recording this, it's rumored. I'm hoping by the time this airs, it'll be a finality.
Isn't it wild that all these video game adaptations are coming out, and these have been in the development
forever
for
They've been ever.
2
But
decades.
It took Netflix to start noticing this. It took Netflix to start
with The
going ahead and saying,
Witcher, and now Showtime has the Halo show, which finally got made, but none of the people involved are even remotely going to have their names on it as even a co-producer.
Exactly. I mean, I was just watching recently an Xbox documentary talking about how they closed Xbox Entertainment Studios, and now finally Halo is coming out on Paramount Plus. So, I mean, for me, I'm going to say if there's any predictions, I'm going to say if there's any major competitor, I think with the kind of money that it could throw at it, the kind of content that you could throw at it, I would say if there's any Netflix, challenger, I don't say it's Disney Plus. I would probably say it's Amazon Prime. HBO Max, because it ditched the day and date, I think it's going to shoot itself in the foot. And by the end of this year, 2022, that it would have a hard time sustaining itself unless it has a lot of draw-in type of programming, and I don't see that after some of the main IPs. One to watch out for though is Peacock, and Peacock does have the WWE library. It does have anything related
its
to
ads are so short you don't even realize it's been barely a minute.
Yes,
they don't repeat the exact same one. They split it up. They do variations. It also changes every month, and much like they did buy some of the other shows that were also on Netflix or Paramount.
Well, they got the Office, which is a big foundational piece for them. if they ever do decide to go ahead and extend the life of Fast and Furious beyond the movies, and they do like a series, whatnot, that could
would
draw
make
in a lot of
sense.
viewers. But it all depends on a lot of the stuff that they have already. Apple Plus is another name that's out there that has the money, but is it going to commit to the kind of commitment needed to go ahead and challenge with Netflix? Because literally, you could put it on everybody's iPhones tomorrow, and you would have the same kind of user base that you could draw from that you already
think when
have.
they started out first year, they were getting basically iTunes numbers, and it
Yeah.
was very unimpressive. But I've really been impressed that they bought the A24 indie film libraries, so they're going to oversee a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
The only thing I'm frowning upon is they decided to create an animation studio, and they had John, infamous John Lasseter from, had been fired from Pixar.
Yes.
I was like, I don't understand that logic at all.
And again, they're trying to recreate, the same lightning in the bottle that, obviously what happened with Pixar. But Apple Plus is a wild card in this. It all depends on if they can acquire more back shows and libraries. Creating new content seems to not be an issue with them now. It was at the beginning, but they're creating more and more new content. Can they get a library together that's going to rival a Netflix, a Amazon Prime, or a Disney Plus even? I mean, Disney Plus
good things to say about Ted Lasso and Foundation, but
yeah,
it was rough. They did cancel already like 3 different shows. There was one with Joseph Gordon-Levitt that got like 0 ratings, and they were just like, screw it.
But I mean, they're an entity that has, because you got to look at it from who has the cash and who could go ahead and compete with those 2 big ones, Netflix and Amazon Prime. And I'm telling you right now,
IT department will integrate. It's like,
well, it all depends. I mean,
iPhones.
It's a matter. It's if they give the word again tomorrow, everybody's iPhones could have it right there on their. I would make a part. I would do the U2 album thing and drop it on everybody's iPhone free of charge, and just say, if you've got an iPhone, you've got
have some
Apple
free
Plus.
ads that pop up or something. Yeah.
Yeah, just to pay for it and whatnot. And there you go. I think Apple Plus needs to go ahead and change the game, because when you start in this race, in the streaming marketplace behind like they did, you need to find a way to make a shortcut for yourself. HBO Max made a shortcut for themselves by doing the day and dates for a year. Whether or not that's ultimately going to work out now that they're not doing for it, that's up in question. Disney Plus, they did their shortcut with Star Wars and Marvel. We're going to throw that at you week by week and make sure that you got that coming your way. Amazon Prime, literally with them, because you have Amazon Prime for everything else, they've got a built-in advantage. But with Apple Plus, they need to make a shortcut for themselves. They cannot grow it organically. And in order to do that, they're going to have to cheat the system and just drop it on everyone's iPhone and just say, hey, here it is. Enjoy it. Please watch. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that was a quick, pretty straightforward summary. So what on your show would you like to promote?
Well, I actually do a couple podcasts mainly. First one, if you're into any NBA basketball, I do the Lakers Fast Break, which covers the Lakers and the NBA that's out there. So please check that out. I do 4 or 5 shows a week there. But the main show I guess I'm known for is the Pop Culture Cosmos, which covers the latest news and trends in pop culture. That drops every Monday and Friday to podcast outlets, and it's available on over 50 at this point in time, as of this recording, 50 radio stations worldwide. So
Sweet.
I'm hoping to try and get more. I'm trying to get on more commercial outlets. So if you're interested in commercial radio for a 1-hour, family-friendly, always great conversation on pop culture, and you're welcome to come on anytime, Cameron. You're just, you know what, the red carpet's open for you. You tell me when. We'll talk pop culture anytime you want for a segment. You're always welcome to come on by. But
Honored.
If you are out there and you want to hear more on pop culture, whether it's Marvel, streaming, television, films, the latest going on in video games, the major stuff that happens in pro wrestling, board games, tabletop RPGs, all that great stuff that's out there in pop culture, collectibles, so much more, please go ahead and give us a try. I think you'll be glad you did. Pop Culture Cosmos, wherever you get your podcasts.
Pop Culture Cosmos. You got it. All righty. Well, Godspeed to you. Thank you for the invite. I will take you up on that one. And
absolutely. Looking forward to it. Just hit me up, man.
This is fun and straightforward.
There you go.
We'll return after these messages.
Hey, feeling down? Feeling low? Not enough podcasts about movies in your life? Why not try
They must be destroyed on sight.
the new Podcast Cure-All, sure to get you right with the world and on a path to better living. We have exploitation, we have Italian horror, we have zombies, we have slashers, we have crime films, we have spaghetti westerns, we even have sci-fi and sex comedies. So take a dose of
They must be destroyed on sight.
as needed, and let the hosts, Lee Russell, Daniel Harper, Paul Romali, and the odd guest host cure what ails you.
Warning, may cause atrophy, African consumption, black fever, bone shave, chin cough, colic, cramp colic, dropsy of the brain, elephantitis, grocer's itch, jaundice, mania, miasma, mortification, palsy, Pott's disease, rheumatism, scurvy, St. Anthony's fire, summer complaint, and worm fit in some people. Consult a physician before listening.
Hey, I heard you like movies.
I heard you like to hustle.
I heard you like podcasts.
Well, guess what?
There's a podcast for you out there called The Home Video Hustle.
Damn right.
Every Friday, we talk about whatever movie PJ picks out the bag. What does that mean? Every Wednesday on our YouTube page, I put a bunch of movies in a bag, and PJ picks one out at random. And then we just watch it. We talk about it for maybe like an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever we feel like doing, wherever the conversation leads us.
But do we actually talk about the movie?
Most of the time. Tangents galore.
Yes.
So believe me, we may be a movie podcast, but it's not always about movies. We may talk about video games,
Music.
Yeah, that's the big one, music. Sometimes we might get a little bit of politicalness in there.
Yes.
Sometimes we may just, we know what we like to do. We like to tell stories, PJ.
Yes.
I am the master storyteller
Yes.
of the podcast realm. Undefeated. So if you like to hear about movies, video games, whatever foolishness comes to our mind, the most random stuff you could think of, check out the Home Video Hustle. You can find us on the Stitchers,
Yes.
the Google Play,
Yes.
Apple Podcasts,
What else?
Podbean,
What else?
Podcast Addict,
Goddamn.
all that. Ain't no reason you can't get your hustle on. We everywhere, worldwide, baby.
Hustle, motherfucking hustle.
Hey, we can't cuss in the promo, PJ. We
Ah.
gotta be family friendly. There may be podcasts out there that don't want his hair to say
Ah. Ah.
all
Yeah.
that good fun stuff.
Well, you.
Don't run the listeners away, PJ.
I'm sorry.
But this is going kind of long.
Yes.
So we'll end this and say, hey, check out the Home Video Hustle every Friday on all the various podcast outlets. Peace.
Peace.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster. And while Witch didn't make it to the top of the world, he did make the Gangs of Hollywood podcast. So join the gang and enjoy a movie review podcast about movie gangs, gangsters, mobsters, and the mayhem they cause. You can find GOH Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at GOH Pod at www.gohpod.com, as well as your favorite podcast listening app. And remember, say hello to your little friend for me.
If you take two old punk rockers who are past their prime, put them in front of a movie screen and give them a podcast, what do you get? Cinema Punks. Cinepunks. It's the mixtape of movies.
Did you ever see a film at such a young age it left you traumatized with cinematic wounds? Necrophilia. It's a dead issue, man. Don't push it. Cinema Psyops is a weekly podcast documenting an ongoing experiment on the mind of an unwilling test subject.
No one should have to watch this movie.
Oh, no one should have to watch this?
No one should have to watch this movie.
Surprisingly, it's not a topic that a lot of people really want to tackle.
I'm shocked, prudes.
I know, really.
Right?
It's the next sexual frontier that no one wants to explore.
I am, in the most sincerest of senses, disappointed in you.
It takes a powerful goddess like Connie jam her arm down the monster's throat and kill it. Oh, I'm still tripping out over that. Even as a kid, I was like, I gotta find a girl like that. Every week, I get a new look of disappointment that I never thought I could get out of here.
Unimaginable. At 12 years old, you should not be watching this movie.
Obviously.
At 13, you should not be. 14, you shouldn't be. I'm not entirely sure even 17-year-olds should be watching this.
Just because you're offended by something doesn't mean that you have the right to demand that it doesn't exist. Watching this film again, I had all of this like little nerd glee with everything that kept
little
popping
history doll popping up at you.
So I totally loved this film.
Hey, I know why you couldn't see that. It's because your brain's warped from watching this shit at 12 years old.
Yeah, this is a rough movie. I told you ahead of time when we were getting ready to do it that it was going to be a rough
How did you watch
one.
this shit at 12?
Because physical wounds heal, cinematic ones don't. Listen to Cinema Psyops.
Hey everybody, I'm Corey.
And I'm Zach, and we're the hosts of Podcasting After Dark, a cast dedicated to late-night horror and sci-fi of the 80s and 90s, often found on HBO and Cinemax.
You know, the movies your parents didn't want you watching as a kid. You can find us every other week on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, and Stitcher.
This is what you want.
This is what you get.
It's time, let's check our cue, baby. Pair it with a couple brews, baby. We love good movies. We love the bad ones too. So we watch them all and pass their lessons on to you. Oh yeah. Everything I learned from movies helps to make life a little bit groovy. With a one-liner plot holes and gratuitous movies. It's time to get busy with your friend Steve and Izzy at eilfm.podbean.com.
Welcome to Who Was She podcast. I am your host, Tara Jabari. After a decade working in documentaries, marketing, and all things digital media, I found that podcasting is a strong medium to share stories. After years of producing for others, I decided to start my own biographical podcast. Who Was She will focus on the life of a woman throughout Baha'i history. The first season is about Lydia Zamenhof. Lydia's story explores the subjects of the power of language and faith. Her father invented the universal language Esperanto, and she came from a Jewish family and became a Baha'i. She grew up during World War I and was killed during World War II in a concentration camp, despite heroic efforts to save her life. How can one person's life intersect with so many others, connect across borders, and inspire a biography which inspired this podcast? Over the next few weeks, I will share her story with you and the lives that were most affected by her and those who affected her life as well. They include her father, Ludwig Zamenhof, her spiritual mother, American journalist Martha Root, and the Baha'i German soldier Fritz Mako, who worked for the resistance undercover while having to serve the Nazi Party. I want to thank the author Wendy Heller and George Ronald Publishing for their blessing to let me use Heller's biography, Lydia, The Life of Lydia Zamenhof, Daughter of Esperanto, as a main and instrumental resource for this podcast. So please subscribe and learn about this amazing woman who traveled through 3 continents in an effort to bring unity through the power of language. You can also find more information on our Instagram, Facebook, and Pinterest at Who Was She Podcast. Music was composed and performed by Sam Red. I am your host, Tara Jabari. Join us next time as we begin our journey about Lydia Zamenhof.
Hi everybody, it's Mac Jackson. I wanted to invite you to a new site called the Forever Adventure Network. This website has everything. Pictures, videos, blogs. There's original music by Harmony Constant, 2 podcasts. One is the MacGyver podcast, where we celebrate Richard Dean Anderson, his iconic roles, and how it's influenced our lives. There's episode discussions, interviews, and life conversations. The second podcast is the Never Gets Old podcast, where we celebrate all the best things that we love in life, from TV, movies, music, and comics. The site is also the home for the MacGyver SG-1 audio series, an ongoing adventure series that continues the adventures of MacGyver and SG-1. There are also multiple stores to choose from for all of your pop culture and adventure needs. Come on by and check us out today. And thanks for joining the adventure.
Are you sick of the same old stale podcasts? Well, then join Vanessa and Darren as they dissect movies of all kinds. The 2 lifelong cinema lovers bring their favorites, curiosities, and first-time watches to the operating table and inject them with a healthy dose of snark. Then there's the waiting room, where they examine books and short stories. So just look for them on Apple Podcasts and where fine podcasts are available. They're part of the Legion Podcast Network. Follow them on Twitter at VDClinicPod. Join them on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/VDClinicPod. Or email them at vdclinicpod@gmail.com. They're ready to cure what ails you. And still, they just might be a little contagious.
Hi there. It's Heather from the Watching Netflix Without You podcast. Did you know that there are over 1,200 Netflix original feature films and documentaries? And that number is only growing. So I've made it my mission to watch as many as I possibly can. Then, with a delightful guest or guests, disclaimer, more often than not my brother Ryan, we spend an episode rating, reviewing, and discussing a film at length. The first half of every episode is spoiler-free for those who haven't seen it yet, and in the second half, after a very clear spoiler warning, we dive into it. And that's really about it. You can listen to Watching Netflix Without You on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and more.
We now continue with our program.
Follow us on the web on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The podcast is available on Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor, Apple, and anywhere else podcasts are available. Feel free to review our show and leave comments on any of those sites. Thanks a million for listening.
It's a jacked up